Welcome. This is the second episode of our new series on the work-life balance, figuring out the work-life balance equation. And I have the pleasure with me today of Ms. Jennifer Beadles joining us from, where are you based now? Phoenix?
Yeah, yeah. We're based in Phoenix, Arizona. Yes.
Awesome. So Jennifer Jennifer is a friend and actual real estate investor who is amazing. She is an educator. She is, I don't even know how to describe her. She's a mom, she's a wife, she's amazing. And I've always been such a fan of how she operates with such integrity and care for everyone who crosses her path. So it's an absolute honor to have her on the show today. And Jennifer, fill us in on a little bit more about your background. I don't think I did it justice. Let us know how, a little bit more about you.
Sure. Oh, and I'm so grateful to be here and to have this conversation with you because I feel like we need to be having this conversation with more people, especially through, COVID. The last 2 years have been really difficult for people trying to find that work-life balance through all of the chaos, I guess, that's been happening. And so I'm just thrilled to be here, thrilled to be here with you, Gilda, and having this conversation. So, gosh, a little bit about my background. So I got started investing in 2007. I'm originally was based in Seattle, Washington, up until about 2 years ago. We left Seattle, went on an 18-month trip across the United States. We did an RV trip for a good amount of time, and then we spent quite a bit of time over in Europe as well, traveling, and then eventually basing ourselves here in Phoenix. But the purpose of getting started in investing was to have freedom. So prior to that, I was, when I got started, I was 21 years old. I was doing the college thing. I was working 2 jobs. And I really wanted to get into business. However, my parents had owned a business and they had no freedom. So they owned a retail business, and my dad was a photographer. And so literally they worked 7 days a week. And the holidays was a very busy time for them. So they were always working on Christmas Eve, Christmas morning. And so it was really interesting kind of growing up with that experience, watching my parents, again, build this business, but having no freedom. And so I saw real estate as the path to having more freedom because we get a lot of leverage, meaning we can buy properties, turn them over to a property manager who's kind of the operator, if you will. And essentially, we can have these income producing assets that are generating income regardless of where we're located. And so in the beginning, though, we didn't have freedom. So we were doing everything ourselves. My husband was our handyman, our, contractor, working with the tenants. He was doing the screening for the tenants, marketing for the tenants, everything like that. I was finding the deals, running all the numbers. And then in the midst of all of that, we also had to earn enough money so that we could get the loans. And so it was kind of like taking on a part-time job. And it wasn't until we pivoted our strategy to more investing out of state and investing into larger, bigger projects that we learned how to have a little bit more freedom in doing so, and also allowing other people to do the work for us. So it's kind of next level leadership, really. It was learning how to succeed through others as opposed to being the owner operator and kind of doing everything. And so yeah, so that's a little bit about kind of our investing. But really what I'm most passionate about these days is helping people kind of build their own portfolio, eventually, exit the rat race, quitting their 9 to 5, replacing their income from these passive income producing properties. And so for me, it's really exciting to see people succeed in that.
That's fantastic. And it's almost like you really learned from what not to do from your parents as to figuring out for yourself and really using that leverage to kind of get your time back. Just Jennifer, taking you back to the time when you were kind of working 2 jobs and sort of in the grind, was there anything other than the desire for freedom to kind of help you figure out, even during those days, a semblance of balance, or was there really no balance there at all in that time?
Yeah, so there was zero balance. So,
Like, to be
uh,
honest.
yeah, well, just full transparency. Every dollar that we made was put back into investing. And so we had, dual focuses, right? Again, make enough money to qualify for mortgages, and then take any extra money and then put that into buying these investment properties, but also doing everything ourselves. And so again, it was really interesting because I learned that lesson from my parents, and yet I repeated it, but in a different industry, right? And so it wasn't. We had a moment, and this was in I think it was 2015, and we were having this big barbecue over Memorial Day weekend. And at that point, we were living in our dream home. My husband had retired. So he retired, quit his job at 30 years old, never to have worked again, right? That was his like retirement time. And so we had all of these people over at a Memorial Day barbecue, really enjoying ourselves. And then we get the call, and it's a tenant. And the septic tank was backing up into the bathtub, and essentially all of the sewage and stuff in the septic was coming back up into the building. And so my husband had to leave the barbecue, go and sort this out, calm down the tenants, try to find an emergency plumber to figure out what was going on. So he spent hours there. So by the time he came home, everyone was gone. And he walked in the door, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both kind of had the same idea in our mind, is like, we are doing this wrong. We're doing this for freedom. And so we have some freedom, but not really the freedom that we were expecting, right? And so both of us looked at each other and said, we're doing this wrong. We need to pivot. But we didn't really know what that pivot looked like. And so immediately I said, we need to go out of state. And he was like, what? We don't know anyone in other states. We've only ever lived in Washington. Where would we even go to? Like, how could we trust anyone? What does that look like? But that question changed everything. And so back to your original question, like, what were we seeking out? I think, of course, freedom, but I think it's also really important to sit back and take a step back sometimes and look at your life and analyze, do I really have what I think that I have? And if not, I believe it's either mindset or you're missing a who, or sometimes it's both. And so in that point for us, we were missing both. We were our owner operators. And so we learned how to succeed through our actions and the work that we were doing, but we couldn't figure out, or we didn't know how to, at that time, how to succeed through others. And then the other part is we had this limiting mindset, which is, in order to succeed, we have to do it ourselves. And so once we asked that question, once we really kind of took a step back, we realized we don't have freedom. If my husband had to leave a barbecue to go sort this out, then we don't have freedom, and we need to make some changes.
Yeah. And so when you talked about, and it almost sounds like they're combined. So the mindset piece and missing the who, the mindset of having to do it yourself. I guess, what made the change for you? I mean, obviously you had the moment, it was your wake up, you were on your husband's wake up call that, okay, something's gotta give, let's reassess. But what actually helped you make the shift and help you to cultivate the mindset of maybe the who, not the how, or whatever that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just getting real with yourself.
Okay.
And then I think the other thing is just taking action. So I think it's really important. All of us have pivotal moments in our life that we're at a crossroads and we have a decision to make. And so I'm a big believer in, once you've made the decision, then take immediate action. But I see a lot of people that make the decision, but there's lacking commitment. And so then they don't take action, and then they're in this almost like purgatory, like kind of stuck in, well, I want to do this thing, but it's a little scary and I'm not so sure. And so there's a lot of inaction and a lot of talk and less action. And that's not a fun place to be. And so immediately after that, it was, okay, well, getting really clear on, what do we want? Why do we want it? So for us, the what do we want was, we want to make more money. We want to continue to scale up. And then the why was, because we have no freedom and we want more, and we want to be able to be wherever we want with whoever we want, and just be present, right? And not have to be, the phone rings, we need to go and deal with whatever situation is coming up. And then I think the next step would be listing out all of the possibilities. And so, and then taking action on those, right? So for us, it was like, okay, well, the first question would be, where do we even start? Like, where do we go? And so in our case, it was, where do we invest? And so then I started coming up with some criteria. Well, I don't want to be in areas with high probability of natural disaster. So let's take out, Florida and the coastal markets. And then it was like, okay, well, we want to make money. So let's, exnate the West Coast and the Northeast, right? And so I just, kind of asked myself a series of questions. And then it was like, okay, well, what types of deals are we looking for? It's like, well, let's just go ahead and buy something small, a 2 to 4 unit property, things like that. So I think unpacking the next steps and then immediately taking action. And then the next thing, once I've basically written out all of the possibilities, all of the next steps, then the final question is, okay, who do I know that is doing this, that can support me on my journey or help me along the way? And so at that point, Dina, who works for our company, she had been investing out of state. And so I said, okay, Dina, help me get over my mindset and my limiting beliefs. What do I need to believe? What do I need to be thinking? What questions should I be asking? And so she gave me some things to consider and to think about as well. And then I just started connecting with other people that were also doing this. And so basically that's my framework is, what do you want? Why do you want it? And without a compelling reason why, I think a lot of times we just get stuck. Again, we don't feel compelled enough to take action or to make a change in our lives. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing would be, what are all the possibilities? And then the last question would be, okay, who do I know that can support or help or has done this before?
That's amazing, Jennifer. And was there ever any concern? Because I know some people just starting out where they're wanting to do it all, they're just thinking, I don't have the budget to go hire somebody else. What do you tell them?
Yeah. Well, so, in terms of hiring, so leverage is your friend. Leverage allows whatever you're working with to go further. And so I think that like this example could be applicable in a lot of different areas of our lives. But I think that if you get really clear on the bandwidth that you have and your strengths and what you're able to do, if you bring some leverage into your life, then you can do more of that thing, right? And so, in terms of, I think it's really easy to find the money or to find the funds for almost anything we want to do in our lives. But a lot of times we just don't have the time or the capacity. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, again, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of leverage different things that you're doing, maybe non-income producing activities, having people do those for you so that then you can free up your time to either learn a new skill, develop a skill set, or, start making some impactful decisions for sure.
Gold. Thank you.
Sure. This is really I'm big on leverage. Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. And then I guess taking us back to present moment, now that you have some leverage systems, people in place, how do you integrate balance into your life now? Again, that framework is fantastic, but I guess, more the day-to-day or even just a structure that kind of can help people know where to start. Once they've maybe gone through your framework and asking the right questions, how do they start to integrate balance into their life, in your opinion?
For sure. Well, I think we all define balance a bit differently. So I think it's getting clarity on what balance means for you. I have tried a lot of different things over the years. I actually had a point where I decided to retire. It lasted about 2 weeks and I got very bored and felt unfulfilled. Okay. So literally I woke up and I was like, well, what do I do today? I guess I can go to Target. Maybe I'll go get a coffee. I don't know. I'll go on a walk. And so, I think it's really interesting. So I get balance in a couple of different ways. One is spending time with friends and family, the people that I care about. That gives me energy. And so I want to do more of those things. The other way that I get balance is in the work that I'm able to do. I get a lot of fulfillment there, but the two are conflicting. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to spend time with my family. Actually, I shouldn't say it's difficult. It is impossible to be both spending time with your family and
Right.
doing work, right? And
Yeah.
so I really lean into the present. So meaning when I am doing work, I'm all in, I'm present, I'm working. And then when I'm with my family, I don't work, meaning I'm not answering emails, I'm not doing any kind of follow-up. Because one, that indicates to my family that the work is more important than them, right?
Mhm.
And so just not being present isn't fair to the people that you're spending time with. So I think that that's really important. Is so if you're doing the work, do the work. If you're with your friends and family, be with your friends and family. So I think that that's really important. But in terms of the day to day, it's really interesting. We've tried a lot of different things. These days, I would say I work maybe 3.5 days a week. I think it's really important for everyone to schedule downtime. And I know that that probably doesn't sound like illogical, scheduling downtime. But I think, especially in the United States, it's so interesting. We have this culture of busy, busy, busy. We kind of wear it as a badge of honor. You know, when
Yeah.
you talk to somebody, how are you doing? Oh, I'm so busy. And it's almost like we're saying that that's a good thing. And
Mhm.
it's not. We don't allow ourselves the opportunity to think strategically or creatively if
Yeah.
we're just running from one thing to the next.
Mhm.
And so it's really interesting. So I have down days. So every Friday is like my down day. And that's, I read books. I sit out on my back patio and watch like the hummingbirds, like the birds come in and just things out in nature. And I just read and I'll do yoga. And my husband and I will go on walks and hikes. And it's really interesting. I think in this downtime, I get a lot of ideas and I get just creativity is kind of flowing. And so I'll take a lot of notes and journal and things like that. Um, but then like kind of giving a broader picture uh, as far as like the work life balance for my family and I, we work in seasons. And
Okay. I
so
was gonna ask.
yeah, so it's
Great. Yeah.
yeah, so it's really interesting. So we typically take, I would say 8 to 10 weeks off at a time. And that's I'm present with my family. We are, of course, typically traveling during those times. And so we're having new cultural experiences, we're having adventures, we're doing bucket list trips. And so in that season during the year, I'm not really working. And
Mhm.
so, my team is doing things. We're not buying many investment properties. That's just kind of our season of fun and adventure. And then when we're home, then typically it's that again, like that 3.5 day work week. And we're doing a little bit more like time blocking. My husband and I, I would say my husband, daughter, and I have a 7-year-old daughter. We all get up pretty early. And so we just kind of do fun family things in the mornings. We try to like connect as a family in the morning. My daughter goes to school. And I'll do maybe 90 minutes of deep work, which is, I think, like the maximum that any of us have is like probably like we're good for like 90 minutes. And then we just need to cool our brains down and we need to take a break. And so then my husband and I, like, we just got back from a really nice walk around our neighborhood.
Mhm.
And we just, I don't know, talk about whatever and plans and just like not work stuff. And then we come back and do about another 90 minutes. And then we'll do like a lunch break. And then I wrap up my day at 2 o'clock when my daughter gets out of school. And then it's just kind of fun for us after that. And so I feel like this like seasons in our life of work and play and fun really kind of provide us that balance. So I feel fulfilled in the work that I'm doing in my professional life, but I'm definitely feeling fulfilled with just spending time with my family and having these fun adventures. And it's taken a couple years to get there. So this did
Yeah.
not happen overnight.
Right.
And we've tested out a lot of different things. And it's really working for us. It feels it feels good. It feels right.
That's awesome. And I mean, when you said you're taking the 8 to 10 weeks, is that throughout the year, like spread out, or is it just 8 to 10? That's your playtime, and you're taking those full weeks off consecutively.
We're pretty much taking that off. Yeah. So I think for any
Mhm.
business owner that is watching, if you can't take 8 weeks away from your business, then
Mm,
you've got a leverage issue or systems and processes issue or both.
Wow.
And so I work with a lot of business owners. I have a lot of business owner friends. And that's the first question that I ask them is your business built in such a way that you could take 8 to 10 weeks off at a time and have the revenue still coming in?
Wow.
And I would say 95% of the time they say no. But then
Okay.
we unpack that a bit and then we realize, oh, it's just a leverage issue.
Mhm.
Or it's, maybe a little pivot to get to that point. And so we tested this the first year that we had ever done this. And by the way, I learned this from Tim Ferriss, the 4 Hour Work Week,
Yes.
the mini retirement trip section, I think. Maybe it's a chapter or something. And so we tested this first it was in 2017. And
Mhm.
at that point, I was feeling a lot of unbalance in my life and in the work that we were doing.
Mhm.
And so I told my husband, just crazy idea. I said, what if we took, at that point, it was 10 weeks. I said, what if we took 10 weeks and we traveled Southeast Asia? And if the business is gone when we get back, we'll rebuild it. If
Wow.
it's doing okay, great. But I fully went into that experience thinking everything could go away in 10 weeks and I'd be okay with that. Like,
Hmm.
honestly, I thought that is a possibility.
Huh.
And so we went on that trip and it was really interesting. So what I learned from that, so the business grew, everything was fine, nothing bad happened, except that I came back and I realized that I was the bottleneck in my business.
Interesting.
Mhm. It's a really
Wow.
humbling moment when you leave your business and it does better when you're gone. So,
Interesting. That is, wow. Well, and I love the fact that you're sharing that this isn't something that happened overnight. I mean, you
no.
definitely have given a lot of thought to having the end in mind and planning from there, but you were never afraid to experiment, try different things, see what worked best for you and your family. And I think, as you pointed out, just balance is going to be different for all kinds of people. Sometimes people call it
Mhm.
work life harmony, integration, whatever you want to call it, but it's going to look and feel completely different and for everyone, depending on the nature of your business and what season in life you are at as well.
Yes.
So but I just love that it's always something that you're iterating and kind of figuring out, and your willingness to detach and say, well, this is so important, like, again, something's got to give again, that let's just try it and see what happens.
Mhm.
And you weren't afraid to really, go for it, and because it was so important. So that's amazing. I think it's just important that people know that it, it's okay to try different things, and you've gotten different ideas from different books and things of that nature. But in terms of you going through that process, Jen, was there anything that helped you? Was it just like a process of trying different things, trial and error, and now you kind of have it figured out? Or are there certain parameters around what you figured out, kind of like your criteria for investing, that
Mhm.
came through or emerged, that it's like,
Mhm.
okay, now that you've gone through several experiments, here's a new framework for trying things within the work life balance piece of it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what's really helped is to get clarity on the worst case scenario and situation. And it's
Mhm.
really interesting because I think naturally it's really easy for us to say that's not possible or that's too scary. But if you unpack that maybe 3 or 4 levels deeper, it's really nothing, right? And so
Mhm.
so I like to say, what is the upside, what is the downside to almost any kind of decision that seems a little scary. And a lot of times if the downside is so insignificant, it's kind of like, why not? Okay, worst case scenario, again, we've done this before, we rebuild the business. Worst case scenario, we can't even rebuild the business, we go get jobs. So like our worst case scenario would be the average person's reality, right? So
Right.
it was kind of like there is literally no downside to doing this experiment back in 2017 that we had done, but there's exponential upside, which is we get new experiences together as a family, we get to have fun, we get to experience all these different countries and new cultures. But what was really interesting, and I'm not a social media person, I'm probably the worst social media. Like I share travel photos and on occasion, like some little information about what we do. But I did want to document that trip. Um, and the people that reached out to me and said, "Oh my gosh, how do you do this?" And I want to do that too. It
Mhm.
was really, really interesting. It kind of opened up a new world of possibilities of conversations with people that were thinking the same thing, but maybe hadn't had the courage yet to take the leap. And
Right.
so we started having conversations like, well, okay, well, what would that look like for you? What would you need to do in your business in order to even do just like a 4-week trip, right? And then it was interesting. We had some W-2 employees that said, "Gosh, you've inspired me to go back to my employer and say, hey, can I work abroad for 2 months? Can I spend the
Mm,
summer abroad?" So
yeah.
a lot of this is, of course, we're talking about in the application for a business owner, but it works for the W-2 employee too. And COVID proved that. COVID proved that you can be working from home and still productive. So why couldn't you be working from Bali and be productive, right? And with the time zone difference, especially like if you consider most of Europe is, it's going to be like 8 or 9 hour time difference, at least from Pacific time. And so you could be spending all morning going and checking out historical sites and enjoying, these towns and cities and then working in the evenings. Right. And so for some people, that's the comfort level as well. I'm going to, of course, keep working, but I want to have this experience of what it might look like, getting outside my environment and experiencing some of these other cultures. So that's possible too. But yeah, I would just say the biggest thing is I look at the downside, the very worst case scenario. And a lot of times it's not very scary. It's just, we think it sounds scary because we don't know anyone that's doing it, or we haven't really thought about like how it's possible. But again, it's usually not very scary to do these things.
Well, I love that too. And one of the things I wanted to share with viewers is I've known you for some time, and one of the mindsets that you've kind of helped to emphasize that I absolutely love, that's maybe not kind of verbalized here, is that when Jen takes something on, she's always sort of got this, if I don't know, I'll figure it out, or I'll
Mhm.
find somebody who knows a little bit
Mhm.
more and I'll learn. And
Mhm.
it's just, that's kind of who you are and how but that's one thing that might not have come through with some of the answers to your question. So I wanted to just
Mhm.
point that out in terms of, because everyone sort of will get on a trek and sort of bop along, but at some point they can get knocked off, or there's an obstacle. But if there's something that does get in your way or not allowing you to focus on the priorities that you need to, are there any particular strategies or time management techniques or anything of that nature that help you get
Mhm.
back on track?
Sure. Uh, yeah, I set big rocks. So pretty much in any day, I look at it as like, what's the one thing that I need to accomplish today? And if I do that one thing, I won the day. If I can get anything else done after that one thing, that's great. That's the icing on the top.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that we're so quick to just schedule out our day and just kind of and or let other people dictate our time in our day. And
Yeah.
then we feel at the end of the day that, wow, I just worked 12 hours, but I accomplished nothing. But
Hmm.
I worked all day long, and that feels weird. And you do that for enough time and it leads to burnout.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of very negative consequences for living that lifestyle. And so yeah, so I set a big rock every single day. And pretty much I have this little journal. It's called a daily plan sitting right next to me. And then I rip it off, tear it off every day, and then I get to the next day. I also plan my day the night before.
Hmm.
So I don't wake up and, first thing, I think a lot of us, we wake up in the morning and it's like, look at our email, look at our phone, and then we plan our day from there. And I think that that's just a really terrible way to get anything done. Because again, that's other people's priorities that you're, using to schedule your day. And so those things have really helped me is just, again, focus on one thing, your one big domino, your one big rock, whichever resonates with you. And then do that very first thing in the morning. So that 90 minutes of deep work, that's, basically either chipping away at that rock or like,
Hmm.
lining up the dominoes so that everything else just becomes easier or unnecessary. And so I think we can all do that in practice, right? Is just think, okay, one thing, any of us can accomplish one thing in a day, right?
Absolutely.
If
Yeah.
we own our time.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. For sure.
and then ignore anything else. And it's really interesting. I also noticed if you allow like in your inbox, if you give it a couple of hours, sometimes the problems go away or
Yeah.
self-solve.
Yes, absolutely. No, I know that as well. And for those of you all that are still in a 9 to 5 type of situation where you might not be where Jennifer is yet, I find too that sometimes even like she said, planning your day the night before, very critical. But if you don't have the luxury of necessarily doing your deep work first thing, one of the things you can do is take maybe 20, 30 minutes. That's your time to check email, make sure there's no, fires coming up, and then schedule that deep work, maybe 45 to start. If you're not used to it, and maybe one time a week to start, and you can build up to eventually the 90 minutes per day. And I think it's critical that you're communicating to coworkers, clients, whoever
Yes.
it is, on your out of office reply or on your door, just so that they know and that it's in the best interest of who you're serving, because your best work comes out of it and it's going to really benefit everyone. So I think there are ways to do it. And again, Jennifer can set hers up in a way that, hey, you do the 90 minutes first. If I have my choice, that's the way I'd like to do it. But there's some days where that doesn't happen. I have other things to take care of, but just doing that first, or even checking emails at certain times during the day, that those are those times that you respond. And like Jen pointed out, sometimes they work themselves out. So it's even better.
Yes. It's always great when you come back to a problem and it solved itself.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know, it's like, oh, and that's just proof again that, like you said, when you came back from your trip, that, oh, wow, it is very humbling. I guess I'm not as needed. But
Yes.
again, kind of like you mentioned earlier with that badge of busy, I feel like it's so ingrained. It's so ingrained. So it's tough to get out of that. But I think your advice earlier about taking the action, that even if someone does just one thing toward the break or the self-care or something to give them that boost, and even asking, well, what does energize me? So for you, family, for other people, it might just be you need a little bit of solitude, your own alone time to think for yourself, even if it's just for 10 minutes. So no,
100%.
stuff. Anything in particular that you learned earlier on in regards to this topic that you wish you had known earlier, that you wish you had started a little bit earlier, just looking back?
Yeah. I do wish that I had been better about setting boundaries for myself.
Okay.
So, I didn't get to this part in the story, but I was a real estate agent for many years, a top number one agent in my office, which meant that I worked 7 days a week. And clients would call me starting at 6 a.m. And oftentimes the calls would end around 10 or 11 p.m. And I had no boundaries. And that led very, very quickly to burnout. But it was really difficult because, especially in that line of work, a phone call could be worth $50,000. Right. And so I was very quick to justify, well, I have to answer this call because I have no idea what's going to be on the other end of the line. And oftentimes, a couple of examples, my husband would be making dinner and we'd sit down to dinner and I'd have my phone right next to me and the phone would be ringing and I'd be like, hold that thought and answer the phone.
Right.
And so I had no boundaries. And then as I started to learn a little bit more about this work-life balance, because unfortunately you're less productive if you're burned out, and everything is more difficult in life. Relationships are very difficult. You're not going to be feeling well. I remember I went through some health issues of just, I would like break out in like hives and get like, almost like eczema. And I think it was like stress induced because of course my body was running on adrenaline. And I was working 7 days a week and I had no time for rest. And every call was also, it was like, a fire drill, right? Somebody's bringing me something that is on fire and it's like hot potato. And so yeah, unfortunately there were some periods of time where I'm like going to the doctor, like, hey, okay, I've got like, highs. And they're like, okay, well, here's a steroid for that. Oh, here's this other thing for that. And then I had a moment, actually another pivotal moment that we all have. I remember it was my daughter's first birthday, and we'd planned this trip to Maui, and we paid for the in-laws to go. My husband was there, of course, myself. And we were all getting ready to go down to the beach to spend the day at the beach, right? And I get the phone call comes in, and it's a builder developer that I had been working with. And we were trying to negotiate this deal. So I told my family, hey, I'll be there in 20 minutes and head down. I'll be right there. 5 hours later, they came back, and I was like, oh, I just got off. I was just coming down. And they were like, yeah, that was 5 hours ago that we left you. And so that night, my husband was like, it's not worth it. You literally missed out on an entire beach day because you chose to like negotiate this deal. And yeah, there was a lot of money, like, yay. But unfortunately, it wasn't worth it.
Wow.
And so I started implementing little things, just like you were talking about, of like having the conversations with, your boss or your coworkers. That's a benefit to them, of course, saying, hey, I'm going to focus on this one thing every day that's going to make your life easier. But in order for me to do that for you, I need time, right? Like you're not going to be able to reach me during these times. So anyways, I started with, I told every client, I said, look, I'm not for everyone. Here's what you're going to get when you work with me. And here are my working hours. You can reach me between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. After that, I will get back to you the next day. And it was really interesting. Nobody had any issue with that. Literally, they were like, okay, great. And so I had placed these expectations on myself. And I think we're really quick to do that as women. I think we tend to do that a little bit more as well. Like we feel like, we've got to do all things and be all things to all people because we're like natural caregivers and caretakers.
Right.
And so a lot of times we put our needs on the back burner and serve everyone else. And it's really unhealthy. It's really difficult also to serve others when, you're not fulfilled or you're lacking or you're running on fumes.
Yeah.
And so setting boundaries is really, really, really important. And so learned that early on, kind of started implementing it. And now I have all sorts of boundaries that it's like
awesome. Yeah. And you'll be surprised that when people know what those expectations are up front, they adjust easily. And if they're the kind that are always on call 24/7 anyways, and they're not okay with it, then they're not the right client or person to work with. So that kind of actually weeds themselves out. But you had mentioned you'd started with some little things. So I just love your husband saying it's just not worth it. And that's like another one of those amazing like wake up calls. And I feel like a lot of us have those all the time.
Question is, will we wake up though?
Right. Yeah.
We have to do something about it.
Exactly. And one of the things, actually, I had a rough week about 2 weeks ago where things were off balance. And yes, guys, I'm a work-life balance coach, but I don't have it all figured out. And it was just one of those things where I had too much on my plate, too much on the work side, that I was like, okay, I feel like I need more time with my family. This is just, it's not working. And so one of the things that came out of it, at least for me, was, all right, just tonight, I'm going to spend 10 to 15 minutes focusing just on the family, being present. And the most amazing thing happened, which was higher increased connection and just all like natural, and with like my husband and my 2 girls. So it was just like, wow. I'm like, I got to do this every day. I can't just do this and decide this one thing. But I'm curious for you, what were some of those little things that you started with? Because again, sometimes it's a lot. And I think if anyone's listening to this, Jen's got such great advice that I'd recommend taking just one of her nuggets, just one, and practice implementing it for a week and or experiment with it, even maybe a month. But just don't overwhelm yourself. Take one thing and just work on a little at a time. So any of those little things that you had mentioned that help people get started.
No, well, and I'm glad that you're pulling this out of me because I have a lot of little things and now it's become habitual. And so I don't recognize it. And so, you're doing a great job of asking and pulling it out of me. So I have Do Not Disturb on my phone. I believe that it starts at 6 p.m. and goes until 8 a.m.
Okay.
And that's for so this is like, even like friends and family can't reach me, and very few people have my cell phone number anymore. So it's like, there's not a whole lot of people that have it, but yeah, so that's on, not on do not disturb. The other thing is, a lot of times I will, so I work from home, so it's kind of interesting, but it used to be when I was an agent and I would come home, a lot of times I would either leave my phone in my car or leave it at like the front, like, in the entry, and I would just leave it there. And
Yeah.
so then it was a non-distraction for me, right? So that's a little thing. And then I think, to your point, is just having that connection with your family, and family time. So my daughter gets out of school at 2. Pretty much every single night we're walking the neighborhood, and just, I don't know. I'm also very big into, we need to be moving our bodies more. A lot of us are stuck behind desks all day long, and that is incredibly unhealthy. And
Mhm.
so I'm really big. That was part of our motivation to move here to Phoenix. It was like, I want to hike every single day. Now, when it's 120, it's not as fun. So that's when we leave in the summer, and do our adventures. But I think just getting out, just walks, a 30-minute walk is like therapy to me,
Mhm.
and especially with your family, so that, they're doing it too. Um, and then what else? I mean, I have a giant water jug that I drink water all day
Uh-huh.
long. I mean, like, I think that all of these little things add up. And oh gosh, what else? I had mentioned, my one big rock every day that Fridays and most of Thursdays I'm off as well.
Mhm.
Um,
No, I mean, you've already said so much, Jen. I mean,
mhm.
in terms of just, I think the big one that I'm a huge fan of is just that you're all in with whatever you're doing. And it
Yes.
almost,
Yes.
just like to remind people, it almost doesn't matter the actual time, because sometimes there's seasons for everything, or if whatever
Mhm.
business or industry you're in, you have these busy stretches and seasons, and that's okay. That's
Yes.
fine. But then
Mhm.
even if you only have, half an hour with your family, it's the quality, that being present, that really makes that difference. You don't actually have to spend
Mhm.
8 hours, or nor do we want to sort of spend 8 hours
Right.
all day long, with
Mhm.
family, and friends, and maybe we do on vacation, but it's just,
Mhm.
just that reminder that it's that quality in it. Even if you're in that 9 to 5 rat race, just do pick the 10 to 15 minutes and focus.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
The other thing I will add, that I haven't mentioned, is usually on a quarterly basis, I will do a time tracker. So I
okay,
track every 15 minutes, and I do that exercise for about a week.
interesting.
And so I will, look at where I'm spending my time. And so if I sense some imbalance, then that usually means I'm missing some leverage, and typically a
Mm,
who.
okay. Well,
And
that's
so I've done that.
interesting, 'cause
Mhm.
I love that you're constantly doing that. It's not just a one and done, okay, let's do this, time tracking things, see where things are, but you're making adjustments along the way each time. And
Mhm.
that's,
Mhm.
yeah. And I mean, it's perfect, because there are different dynamics within our lives that,
Mhm.
need that adjustment.
Yes.
Okay, wow. Yeah, and it's so inspiring just kind of hearing what your lifestyle is like now, and that, again, if you're putting some intention and some thought and some planning into this is possible. But you got to start
Mhm.
with, really, like, she's been doing, start with the end in mind, and
Mhm.
give yourself that time to write it all down and figure
Yes.
that out. That's awesome. Wow. I mean, Jen, well, I guess we'll just do one big question then. If it's okay with you, we can go on to the lightning round, because you speak
Sure. Of
full
course.
gems. So I guess, is there anything else in terms of resources, tools, mindset? And again, you've already covered a lot of ground, that have made the biggest difference for you on the work-life balance front. Just anything that you.
Yeah. A couple things. I think it's the books we read and the people that we spend the most time with. And so
Mhm.
I'm really, I would say, like, good about reading books that give me energy, that give me ideas, that get me excited. But for anyone starting out, I would recommend the 4 Hour Work Week,
Mhm.
just because it's not about the 4 hour work week. It's about efficiencies
Yeah.
and systems and processes, and asking yourself kind of, why we do the things that we do. And a lot of times we don't take the time to step back and ask ourselves, right? They kind of like look at our life and say, is this a lifestyle that I want to be living? Or did I just get here some way by happenstance? And so
Right.
being more intentional about the way that we're living. And then the next thing would be, I like to spend my time with people who think really, really big. And that has made, I would say, the most significant difference in my life. And so it's a bit controversial. It's a bit difficult to, I would say, like rate your friend circle, but
Right.
it is so important. I mean, if you are spending time with people who complain about the work that they're doing, they don't like their job, they complain about the weather, they complain about the economy, their everything is a complaint, and they maybe even are like victim language, then unfortunately that's going to bleed off into you. And you
Right.
might find yourself doing the same.
Mhm.
And so, we have a lot of people that we love and care for, and there may be like 10 to 15-minute friends. And then we have friends that we could go and spend 2 weeks with, right? That are
Mhm.
more into abundance and possibility and opportunity. And so, naturally, I think when you spend time with those kind of people, then you'll start to think that way as well. And then pretty much everyone that we spend time with, we spend a lot of time with, they're always challenging our thinking. And
Mhm.
so it's really interesting. And from a caring standpoint, right? Not from judgment, not from a place of judgment.
Right.
It's, I care about you and I'm wondering why,
Mhm.
you're doing these things that aren't serving you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And so I think it's really important to have those people in your life as well.
And just from a practical standpoint, are there any either places or groups people can kind of look for? Because if their current circumstance, they just have it happens to be in, like I said, happenstance where they are or
Mhm.
who's around them at the moment. Maybe
Mhm.
they're realizing now that that's not who I want to be like, and that's not who I
Mhm.
want to hang out with. What else would you recommend other than interests like, okay, real estate investors or
Right.
anywhere someone could start with that? And again,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it depends on what you're into.
yeah.
But I think conferences
Mhm.
are a great place to meet people who are coachable and into education, because typically the big thinkers are also coachable, and they're
Mhm.
lifelong learners, and
Yeah.
they're really interested in bettering themselves. And so it's interesting. I attend a lot of conferences every year, not all about real estate investing.
Yeah.
I like Tony Robbins.
Huh.
Joe Dispenza has some
Yeah.
really interesting conferences and education things around mindset. Um, there's a lot of different opportunities to get surrounded with like-minded people
Yeah.
outside of your current environment. And so I
Mhm.
think that's really important. So I think conferences is a great opportunity to go meet those people for sure.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Well, that was my last question. And then just quick lightning round. And you already answered the first question on that, but
Sure.
which was book recommendations. And in fact, you're making me want to go back and review the 4 Hour Work Week because it's been a while.
Yes.
Basically, the next one is most admired person and why, or it could be an
Mhm.
avatar, kind of like you already described, someone who's a life
Mhm.
partner, those kinds of things.
Mhm. Um, Gosh, this is gonna sound really cheesy, but I would say my husband.
Oh, no, that's sweet.
Yeah. Oh, he is like God's gift to me. He is the best person in the entire world. I like literally try to be more like my husband every single day. Because he could have a lot of it's just like a really bad day to the average person standards, and he's always just so happy. Yeah, everywhere I go, it's really fun. It was just speaking at a conference over the weekend, and so many people came up to me and said, is your husband here?" So
Oh,
good to see you, Jen. But like, is your husband here? So,
okay. Cool.
but no, yeah, he had a really a difficult childhood and a difficult life, and so by all means, he could certainly be like a angry at the world type person, and he's just not. He's the happiest person I know. Every day wakes up happy just to
Oh,
be alive. So he's my hero. Yeah.
that's amazing. Wow. It's like I haven't even gotten a chance to be like,
I
oh,
know. I
awesome.
know. Yeah, I
Okay.
got to meet him.
And then the last part of the lightning round is advice you wish you gave to your younger self? And that could be on any topic, not just.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I would say that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, no, I like that.
Yeah. And so why I say that is I think each and every one of us, we don't know when our final day will be,
Yeah.
right? And so I imagine that we have this like imaginary time clock that is ticking down with every single second.
Mm,
And I think sometimes we stew over things, or we're resentful for things that happen, and we create a lot of stress in our life. I also believe that stress is a choice. It's not a reaction, right?
mm,
We have a choice to react to whatever is put in front of us with stress. And I choose not to have any stress in my life, no matter, regardless of what happens. It doesn't matter. And so, yeah, so I would just say it doesn't matter.
uh,
Whatever is happening, we'll have down seasons, we'll have up seasons, and that's great. And that's just life.
yeah,
And I think we also have to experience like the bad to really appreciate the good. But
yeah,
ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And so I think that would
beautiful.
be, yeah, I cared a lot about what other people thought,
Hmm.
the perception of me,
Yeah.
what I felt like I needed to bring to the table in, work and in life. And I just realized it doesn't matter.
Wow. And just having that imaginary clock, that's interesting perspective to kind of help you see what really is important and
Yes.
what things you can let go of. Oh,
Yes.
absolute gold, Jennifer. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It's been
Oh, it's my
amazing.
pleasure.
I super appreciate you. It's been wow. I want to go back and listen to everything, take more notes than I already have. And I hope you all got a
Um,
lot of value. Jen was so generous with her time and her sharing her wisdom and all the things she's learned, and such a wonderful role model to aspire to. So, thank
Oh, thank you. Well, I can only say that because I was probably the worst person for work-life balance a couple years ago. So I can only speak from experience of how bad it used to be, and where we're at today. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope everyone learned something.
absolutely. Hi, Jilda Vanderheyden back here again with you. Just wanted to thank you for joining us for the interview, amazing interview with Jennifer Beadles. I, as a host, forgot to actually ask her where we can find her. So I'm going to put all her contact information in the video link below. And I just wanted to give it to you all as well here. She actually has two different amazing groups. One is specifically for real estate agents that want to up their game. She's got mindset trainings as well as the how-tos, and is super fantastic. And that group is agentsinvest.com. And then the second group she has, which is where I found her, is for real estate investors, that has lots of education from A to Z on like how to get started, everything ranging from like funding, financing, how to's, renovations, and even building types of projects from the ground up. She's so knowledgeable in all different areas, and that group is called Addicted to ROI, as in return on investment.com. And the best email, I think, for both of those groups is hello@agentsinvest.com. And again, I'll put all this info below. Thanks again for watching, and hope that you learned a lot. And please let us know in the comments if there are any other topics or any other folks that you know that you'd like to see interviewed in this series. Appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.